Good afternoon and welcome to this week's edition to the People Progressing podcast. I have an amazing person on today. Gregg Vanourek is on with us today, and you're going to be shocked and just amazed with some of the things that he's done in his life. It's an honor to have you on, Gregg. And all I want you to do for our listeners real quick is just kind of tell us where you grew up, what you like to do as a kid, and some of the influences maybe that kind of got you onto the journey that you're on.
Well, thank you, Joe. And it's great to be with you. We moved around a lot growing up. So I was born in Southern California and ended up there through about age 10 or so, and moved to Ohio for junior high and Connecticut for high school. And I've lived in DC, Virginia, Colorado a couple times, Connecticut a couple times, London, and Sweden for 10 years. And so growing up, sports was a true love. I played a lot of sports growing up. Soccer was my main sport, and started probably age 5. Took me to Australia with my brother and ended up playing Division III ball in college. But I also, growing up, I played Little League baseball, and I did track in high school, and I did a lot of 10Ks growing up. Played a little bit of basketball, and I just loved sports and being active, and what you can learn from your coaches, and about life and about teamwork, about character, about adversity. So many life lessons there that have truly shaped me. And but also very much shaped by some of the teachers that I've had throughout my K-12, but also particularly in college. I went to Claremont McKenna College in California, and I had a philosophy professor who just absolutely woke me up about the big questions in life. Why are you here? What do you want to do with your life? What's happening in the world? How will you engage? And then the next year, my senior year, I took a course called Theories of the Good Life that just, caused me we studied Eastern and Western philosophy and modern and ancient. And then what do you think a good life is? That was the final paper, of course. And so those teachers just really switched me on to, engaging with life. And it's not just academics. It's not just, theoretical. This stuff matters if you truly engage with it and you bring yourself to it. So those were great influences. My father was a 5-time CEO and had a remarkable business career and leadership career. He was in the Army, did some entrepreneurial stuff, but he ended up in corporate, leading big companies and doing turnarounds. So I had kind of a in-the-house front row seat to kind of the challenges and glories of leadership and working with people to try to overcome adversity and do great things together. And so that was a real lesson for me as well.
And you were an All-American soccer player, so let's not forget to put that in there.
Well, I was an academic All-American, Division III, Claremont McKenna. So I was kind of viewed myself very much as a scholar athlete. We wanted to work hard in our studies, but also work hard on the field, on the pitch, and do great things in both sides, hopefully. So
let's just dive into a little bit of what you're doing from your college days, the first 10 years out of college. So I want people to understand what you do now, but we'll get into more of the nitty gritty, but I just kind of want to paint them a picture of your leadership journey here.
Yeah. So coming out of college, so first of all, I went to the London School of Economics and Political Science to do my first master's degree. And that was a real awakening, living abroad. And where I lived, we had a hall, and it was like the United Nations. We had people from around the world, and that was really wonderful and enriching. And it's a very cosmopolitan city, made some lifelong friends. And I was very interested in politics, policy, public service. And so I felt called to try to get a job in Washington, D.C. at a think tank. And a lot of people were telling me, Gregg, you don't have a PhD, you can't get a job at a think tank, but somehow, I landed a job at a think tank. I was on the education policy team working on K-12 education reform and on a civil society project, which is how do you have innovative community solutions to solve issues like addiction and poverty and homelessness and trafficking. And we did a big study of that. And so I was at the think tank And then we had an opportunity out of the think tank to launch a foundation. It was an education reform foundation, but it was a startup. So we had a bunch of money transfer, into the bank account, and we said, what are we going to do? And I was this young kid with, just worked at a think tank, and I became kind of like the COO of the foundation, essentially. Built the website, designed the budget and the programs, hired people, managed them under the supervision of a former assistant secretary of education, kind of a luminary, written like 12 books. And that was amazing to kind of build this foundation from scratch and try to make a difference in kids' lives through the quality of their education. And that really set me off. I've had a very diverse career, from think tank and foundation to an online education startup that became the market leader and went public, and then teaching and writing books and these things. But education and human development has been a red thread for me, kind of developing people to their potential and trying to help them. And so that's been the organizing principle that has turned out. I didn't know that in advance, but it's turned out to be the red thread.
Well, and where I look up to you so much is your there's leadership workshops and so forth that you do. You've written books. You have helped so many people have a better life. What triggers you to do that? I mean, what gives you that passion to make my life better, if that makes sense?
Yeah. But it feels like I feel called to that work. It just seems like, and there've been times in my career, my life, when I haven't focused on that, when I've drifted away from that, and I felt foreign from myself. I felt separate from myself. And so, but then the times I come back closer in, I kind of come back to what feels like home for me. And I think, I learned that from my parents, my mom and dad, about, just being good people and contributing members of society. I learned it from my coaches and from my teachers, and then from my own experiences of, sometimes, I get caught up in, different points of my career of just climbing the ladder of success and just trying to become somebody. And, you can earn some praise, or you can earn some recognition or whatever, money. And those are all fine. I mean, there's actually value in climbing, just like there's value in working hard in practice to get better at what you're doing. But it can be pretty empty if it's all about that, and if it's only about me. And so just sort of coming to that realization again, and this brings me back to theories of the good life that we were talking about when I studied. It's not just about you. Right? If your life is just about you and, what you can do and what you can achieve for yourself and whatnot, that can feel pretty empty. And there's a lot of people who've gone to amazing heights and gotten to the very top and felt very empty there because it was all about them.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's something about connecting with people. There's something about contributing to other people and being open to them serving you when you need it, because we all have our ups and downs. And so it's that reciprocal, it's that relationship. There's beauty there, I think. And so just trying to keep coming back to that and organizing my life around it, my fatherhood, my marriage, my career, everything, so that it's sort of, it's central. It's not just something you do occasionally or year-end charitable giving and these kinds of things.
Well, I heard you say this one time. It's really hard to live a good life unless you are contributing to the life of others. How important is that statement to you?
Oh, it's fundamental, I think. Yeah, I've been influenced by the work of Jonathan Fields. He wrote a book on how to live a good life, and he talks about vitality, connection, and contribution. You can't do other things if you don't have vitality, if you don't have physical, mental, emotional strength and resilience, right? If you don't take care of yourself. Connection with other people, relationship, real relationships of trust, reciprocity, of depth, right? Over time. And then contributing to something beyond yourself. One of my former colleagues, a friend of mine, and I, we wrote a book called Life Entrepreneurs, which is this notion of don't just live your life, lead your life with entrepreneurial vision and adventure and risk and passion and purpose. And one of the fundamental themes that came out of the 55 interviews that we did with people who live that way was what we called pervasive service, which is an ethic of contribution as a defining feature of our lives. And so it's not just something that Mother Teresa does, thankfully, or that Nelson Mandela does. It's something that we can do every day, whether small or big. I mean, it's wonderful if you join the Peace Corps, if you have the opportunity to do some kind of city year, some kind of AmeriCorps, or if you have the opportunity to be a coach or to lead a group of people and help them develop. But you can also serve your brother. You can be kind to people. You can help out, on a daily basis. And the point is, get into the habit, like Aristotle talked about, the habit of doing that. And it will have kind of a compounding effect where you just become that kind of person because you're looking for opportunities to add a little bit of value wherever you can.
And it could be just as simple as something like I used to tell my students, I want you guys to try something. Next time you go out to dinner, when you're done with dinner, if your servers did a good job, I want you to go up to the manager of that restaurant and ask for the manager. And the first thing you're going to get from the manager is, oh no, what's going on now? Because usually a manager at a restaurant is usually going to think what? That somebody's going to be complaining if they need to see the manager.
Exactly.
When the manager comes up, I told my kids, I said, I want you to go up to that manager. And I want you to say, I had the best service I've ever had in my life. I want you to know that your server that served us tonight did just an unbelievable job. And I said, then I want you to look at the facial expression of the manager and look at how happy you just made that person for that instant. And then think about when that manager goes back and tells the server what you had said, how happy you made that person. It's a very, very small gesture, but it's one that can bring a little bit more happiness and peace to people who sometimes struggle with it. And it doesn't have, like you said, it doesn't have to be huge at this, we can start out small. You're in the grocery store line. Maybe you let someone go in front of you one time, or you pay for Starbucks for the person behind you one time, or it doesn't have to be huge. But as I think you make a great point there. Once you start it, then it becomes a habit. Yeah. And I have a saying, it's practice makes permanence. So if you practice doing some of those things for others, that's going to just become more permanent and more permanent and more permanent in your life. And that's kind of what you're talking about there. I just love that theory because, frankly, I think our world needs it, to be honest with you.
Our world does need it. And I think a lot of people almost do it, but they opt out because it might be awkward, or it might come across as weird, or it might not be well received, or they're kind of busy. But I love what that vignette you just told. It could make a big difference, even those small things. I think people are looking for meaning in their life, and they're looking for mattering. They want their work to matter. And your work can matter regardless of what you do, but you just have to infuse it. And so if somebody hears like, wow, I really appreciated the service or the attention to detail or how responsive you were, it just shows them that what they did matter, and it sort of lifts them up for the next time. And boy, do I need that sometimes. It's wonderful to get that recognition. So let's build more of that. Pay it forward.
Yeah, we all need that. Everyone needs that. And I think what it does too is it gives. I have a saying that your purpose, when you'll find your purpose when you find that your purpose is greater than yourself. And so when you're talking about purpose and going to work, how does a server who's serving at a restaurant, again, we'll go back to that example, how does that server feel like there's a purpose in what they're doing? All they're doing in their mind, a lot of times they get out of their purpose and just think, oh, I'm just giving these people food, or filling their water glass or whatever. When you actually go up and you tell the person how great of a job they did or whatever, now all of a sudden they have more purpose in what they're doing because they're seeing that they have given you joy. And when they see that they've given you joy, that gives them more purpose in what they're doing.
Yeah, there's actually some really good research on this out of a Yale School of Management from Professor Amy Wisniewski. And she said she looked at careers and work, and said there's basically 3 different types of approaches to work. There's kind of just a job, where it's a paycheck and you want to get out of there as quickly as possible, and then have fun. There's a career where you kind of view it as something to advance up a ladder and get promoted and, more responsibility. And then there's a calling.
Yeah.
And where you feel called to this, and it has more meaning to you, and it actually becomes part of your identity of who you are, is you bring that to your work and you feel like the part of this. And she said that any job, any type of work can be a job, a career, or a calling.
Mm-hmm.
And, and you can go up or down that. It can change over time. It can start as a calling, it can turn into a job, and vice versa. But there's things that we have to take ownership of, crafting our outlook and our mindset towards our work. And you do that by, you can creatively try to craft the tasks that you work on so that you have more of a sense of meaning and contribution. You can craft your relationships. If you're in a low-end position as an intern or something, you try to learn from somebody who's more senior and who's got some things to share and who can kind of take you in and as an apprentice or as a mentor, help you, do better and have more impact. And then your mindset, your conceptualization. And so, a server can be like, oh, this is stressful. This is busy. I get a lot of complaints. Or you know what? I'm nourishing people.
Yeah.
I'm giving them an escape from a busy time where they can be with their family, or they can get a glass of wine, and they're going to need this. And I can give them a real quality experience. It's that old legend of President Kennedy at NASA, talking to a custodian and saying, what are you doing here? They said, I'm sending a man to the moon. That's what we're all doing here. We're part of something bigger, regardless of your position in the hierarchy. That's what we're doing.
That's an amazing thing. I got 2 things on that, and this would be cool. At one point, when I went back to school, I had a marketing degree, and I went back to school to get a teaching credential. And I had to work at night from like 11 at night to 4 in the morning at UPS, filling and stacking boxes in the back of semi-trailers. Now, when you talk about is this a job or is this a calling? You're in that a type of job like that. And I got to a point where I felt victimized, right? I was the victim. So when I was the victim, then it was a job. But when I got back there and I thought, you know what? Every box that's coming down this chute to me where I have to stack it, that box means something to somebody. Somebody might be getting a Christmas present or a birthday present or, something that they needed to survive or something like that. And I'm contributing to helping that. When I did that, then it became more of the calling part, even though it was hard. But that's what I'm going to ask you this question, Gregg. How much responsibility does the leader of an organization or the leader of a business have in trying to get people from this is a job to this is a calling? Now, you mentioned it's kind of up to the individual person, but how much of a responsibility is it for the leader to guide the worker into that? Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I would say 100% responsibility on both sides.
Okay.
And so, I am responsible for my own life, and I've got to bring my best, and, I've got to choose as a worker. But as a manager, you're crazy not to try to connect with people and really create an environment where the people can thrive as full human beings. Now, a lot of people have a very mercenary view of what management is and power and positions. And so they're just going to basically, and a lot of us have worked in environments like this, where they are just going to treat us like a widget. And they're just going to squeeze every ounce of productivity out of us, but we are interchangeable. We are not human beings. We are just productivity machines, and they will just use us and abuse us and everything. And a lot of people view the world that way, and that can work in the short term. But a lot of people are going to sense that, and they're going to say, you know what, I've got some dignity. I'm a human being, and I want to be part of something bigger. I want to contribute to the bottom line, but also. And so you're going to get a lot of churn. There's going to be a lot of costs associated with that. I think the wiser, progressive managers are going to realize that there's an opportunity for more business success, more professional success. Just like when you're a coach, if you have a real culture with a real team of relationships and love, right? And respect and dignity, it sort of takes you have an opportunity to go to levels way above the levels of performance if you're just using the fear approach or the mercenary approach. And so there's a performance argument, but there's also, it's just the right thing to do to tap into that human potential. People are not just there to be a productivity machine. They are mothers and fathers and sons and daughters, and they have value, and they deserve respect. And they will leave you if you don't give them the respect. They'll go somewhere else, and you'll just be stuck holding the bag, having to hire people and retrain people. So it can be very powerful. And I think a lot of people are waking up. There's this whole movement towards conscious capitalism and conscious leadership, which is kind of really, it's a values-based approach. It's an ethical approach. It's a more sustainable approach. And I think that there's a battle between this kind of old way, the mercenary way, and the kind of the conscious way. And, we're right in the middle of that. And you know what? We've got to fight for that, because a lot of people are still doing it, in very, they're using their power in very nefarious or, unworkable ways that are, it's just we're seeing the problems in the world associated with that. So.
Yeah. And I think this, I had a guy on my podcast, Cole Manhart, who's an officer in the Army now. And he said this, and it was very profound. He said, you manage machines, you lead and coach people. And I thought about that, and I thought about it. And I'm like, it's exactly what you just said, right? A coach is somebody that cares about their people, empathizes with their people, wants their people to get better. And they let their people know that all of those things, right? They let their people know that they care about them, that they empathize with them. And the people that are underneath a good coach, they know that coach wants them to get better on a daily basis. They want them to progress. And I think that's important for people out there to understand that. And again, people are probably getting tired of me saying it, but I'm going to keep saying it because it's a problem in our country and that I want to try to make a dent in. 70% of people in America are disengaged at work. That is a huge problem. And it's sad to me. I loved what I did. And as an educator, it was my passion. It was my calling. But there's so many people out there that are missing that, and they go through life and all of a sudden they're, older, and they're like, what did I just do for 30 years? And I just feel bad for people that have to go to work for 8 to 12 hours a day, 20 to 30 years, and they're disengaged and don't like it. That's a sad thing for me.
Yeah. I think a lot of people have a misconception about what leadership is. They think that leadership is knowing what to do, telling people what to do, enforcing, accountability, and, having all the answers, maybe being visionary, being charismatic. And those are aspects of leadership, but also of management, which is a different but related thing. But what people are looking for in their leaders and what causes them to be great followers and to step up into leadership and initiative themselves is character, is respect, is empathy, as well as the things like competence and did you do what you said you're going to do, and these kinds of things. A lot of them are the softer side, the human relational elements, where people, people often leave bad managers because, and so they leave the company because, they're not getting a fair shake. They're not getting recognized. They're getting used. And you're seeing that now. I mean, with the pandemic, you're seeing the great resignation. A lot of people are not going back to, and so, people have more choices these days. So we've got to step up our leadership game.
And let's kind of go over that now, because that's kind of what you're more into now, correct? You're teaching at University of Denver. You have taught at the Stockholm School of Entrepreneurship. Tell us a little bit about that journey with the teaching of the leadership piece and how different that is and how much that's changed over the years.
Yeah. So this is a body of work that my father and I got into. My dad, Bob, I mentioned earlier, he's got this distinguished career as a CEO in business. And I've had this more eclectic career across different sectors, public, private, nonprofit. And I've done more entrepreneurial things and startup early stage things. And so we collaborated on this book project where we interviewed leaders in 61 organizations in 11 countries, including Google, Cisco, GE, Spotify, Infosys, down the list. And we developed this leadership model. And so flowing from that work, I've been doing a lot of workshops and retreats with organizations and management teams or boards, and then teaching in master's programs in Europe and in the United States, and in executive education or executive MBA programs. And so it's really also seeing this evolution of how we conceive of and practice leadership. My father, when he started his business career out of Harvard Business School, he literally thought leadership was, I want to run something. And that was the whole motivating force. And then he came over to kind of servant leadership as an opportunity to serve people. And then we've had this kind of corporate philanthropy and corporate social responsibility and this kind of movement. And now we're much beyond that in terms of sustainability and conscious capitalism and conscious leadership. And so it's a more human-centric and also paying attention to our effects on communities and on the world. It's kind of what is the responsibility of business or of leadership as a coach in terms of character development, as well as winning games and these kinds of things. And so I'm trying to basically tease out of my students, what is their personal leadership approach? What is their philosophy? It's not for me to impose on them, but it's for them to go through the journey and study different frameworks and say, where do I land in terms of my approach to leadership? And then to really invest in developing themselves to become better leaders, because that's a lifelong journey. We have so much potential. There's so much we learn through mistakes about leading the wrong way that we can kind of correct over the years.
And we all are going to make mistakes as leaders. I mean, I think that's important for people to understand, is we're going to make mistakes. And I think when we come up with our leadership, I don't know if you want to call it philosophy or way we want to lead and how we want to lead, a lot of it's like, how do we like to be led, kind of helps shape that. But where people, I think, get in a little bit of a problem is when the noise hits. So I could have a leadership philosophy of, hey, people first, we're going to develop our people, we're going to help them grow, we're going to help them do better than what they even thought they could do, we're going to do all this stuff. And then the noise hits, the outside noise that they can't control. COVID is noise, right? So all of a sudden that hits, and all of a sudden we get out of our leadership philosophy or our purpose for leading, because the noise takes us away from that, and we kind of get more into survival mode. And I think that's one of the problems that we're having with leadership right now, is people are seeing what you're talking about, and it's a better in my mind, a better leadership model with the kind of leadership that you're talking about. They have to stay in it. And you said the word consciously. So I think by allowing people to understand what we're talking about, so they can see things consciously. So when the noise hits, now I know I have to stay in. I have to stay in instead of getting outside of it. Does that kind of make sense?
Absolutely. And when the noise hits, that's the real test.
Yes.
If people are looking to the leader, they're saying, no, wait a minute, we just talked about our purpose. We just talked about our values and our vision, but now it's a crisis. Now it's COVID, or now we're struggling. Are they just going to be yet another hypocrite who's going to throw our values out the window and is going to act differently now and treat people poorly? And so that's the test. And that's also the opportunity for you to show that no, we mean business. We together came up with our shared values and our shared purpose, and we are going to stick with that. And then it's like, wow, people respond to that because they have ownership in it. And the other part of when the noise hits, as you said earlier, Joe, sometimes we mess up as leaders. And again, to me, that's an opportunity, because nobody is perfect. So it's an opportunity for you to show some vulnerability, for you to actually rely on your team to help you get through it, to give them credit, as opposed to just trying to pretend like I have all the answers and I'm the only one who can get us through everything. And like, that's just not sustainable over time. I mean, maybe a couple times, but it's so much more powerful if you build that team where we all are in it together. We have a sense of ownership. And as we talk about a sense of stewardship, we're all stewards of the long-term success together of this enterprise. We all own it. We're in it together, and it feels good. It feels a bit like a family. It feels like a team, as opposed to I just go to work and I get told what to do and I do it.
Yeah, empowerment for your people is huge. It's definitely huge. And as a coach, there were times where I'd call some of my players in and say, "What do you think we need to do in practice today?"
Yeah.
And it was weird because they would look at me like, "Well, you're the coach." I'm like, "No, I want to know what you guys are thinking. I want to empower you, because the more I empowered them, the more it showed them that I believed in them. And also the more I empowered them, the more ownership they took in what we were doing. So I think that's hugely important. You don't have to control everybody. You have to lead them and coach them and be there for them. And I also think that you mentioned mission statement and vision statements and so forth. I've seen so many businesses where the mission statement is just that. It's a mission statement that hangs on a wall.
Yeah.
And unless I love the idea of coming up with your mission and vision statement with your people, because again, that gives them that ownership. But unless you as the leader are the example of your mission and vision statement, and you have the purpose of that, then it's not going to happen. Yeah. And your culture will struggle unless you're the leader who leads by the example of what your mission and vision should be. So I also think that culture breeds character. And I think culture and character win, but that all has to be led by the leader. They have to live it and be the example.
Yeah, that's right. In our Triple Crown Leadership book, we talk about building a culture of character. And that's the legacy of great leadership.
Yeah.
A culture where people own it, where there's respect, where you honor the shared values. And to your point earlier, people don't want to have values imposed on them. No. They don't, even if you're Steve Jobs, they don't want to have a vision imposed on them. They want to be part of the process.
Right.
And so it feels like, well, maybe I didn't get every word that I wanted, but there was a good process that we did together, and now we own that. And so now it's going to be used. It's not going to be pablum. It's not going to be a joke or something on the wall, but then again, they're looking for their leaders to see, if you're actually honoring it. And just to go back to what you were talking about earlier, we were talking about empowerment. And I love what you said about asking players, if you're a coach, for their input. A lot of coaches would never do that in a million years because they would view that as a failure of leadership, as showing weakness. But I think that's wrong. I think you're actually inviting their leadership. You're showing some vulnerability and openness. But we like the term unleash. What we want to do as leaders is we want to unleash the potential in people.
Yeah.
People have so much untapped potential in terms of their ideas, their initiative, their creativity, their leadership. And, to your point earlier about disengagement, it's not being used because the leaders are making all the decisions and just telling them what to do. So if we could, tap into, more of that, it's unbelievable what you can do together through that sort of culture of collective leadership, of shared leadership.
And every time you do that, you give your people more confidence. You give your people more belief in themselves, and they grow and they learn. And guess what they want to do then? They want more of it.
Yeah.
So they want to keep doing that. They want to keep progressing. They want to keep getting better. And I call it the light bulb moments. When great leaders can get people that they lead to do things better, or even can do it to a better extent than what those people even thought they could do it themselves. Yeah. And I call that the light bulb moment. And then the other thing that is a light bulb moment is when you have somebody that you're leading who's afraid to do it, or they're just not sure of themselves and everything else. That's such an opportunity to help that person grow and get that light bulb to turn on. And when it turns on, man, it is so awesome. Now, if you have that kind of culture in your business, what is your business going to do?
Yeah, it's incredible. You talk about peak performance. You talk about flow experiences, flow, the research on flow being so, this is Mihai Csikszentmihalyi's research on being so in the moment that you lose track of time and you operate at your very best at peak performance. Flow is not just an individual phenomenon. Flow can be achieved by teams, by groups of people, but they need to be aligned.
Mm-hmm.
They need to have that culture. They need to have clarity from the shared purpose, values, and vision. They need to have guidance from a leader who can step between the hard edges of leadership and the soft edges of leadership, depending on the situation. You need great people, but together it can be an unbelievable peak performance experience when you get them moving together in the same direction.
So go ahead.
The last thing I'll say is one of the things that I've discovered, it's another red thread in my career, which is where people get tripped up that keeps them from being a great leader or working at peak performance, is we're not so good at leading ourselves well. Often we focus on leading others and leading change and this kind of thing, but we get tripped up on our own purpose and our own values and our own choices and our own health. We're working so hard, we become a workaholic, or we don't take care of our health. We don't take care of our relationships or our family. We don't keep hobbies or old friendships. And so as leaders, we need to do that. And we need to create a culture where people can lead themselves and have a life. And so that's my work on life entrepreneurs and on crafting your life and work, because that's the root cause of where a lot of people get into trouble. They take for granted and they don't care for leading themselves enough or well enough.
Would you say that's the number one thing you could tell somebody who wants to start their own business or be an entrepreneur?
I would say, I don't know if it's the number one thing, but it's foundational.
Yeah.
And it will never go away, the need for that. And it's so easy to get caught up in ego, where it's like, oh, look at me, we're doing great, we're in the top or whatnot, or to be caught up in fear. Oh my God, what if I make a mistake?
Right.
How am I going to be viewed if we lose the championship, or how if I make the wrong decision? And then that pulls us away. Then we're using the ancient, not advanced part of our brains, right? And so we want to be working with the wise part of our brain, the sage and the creative part. And so we need to be away from ego and fear and truly leading ourselves well.
And I've seen both of those, ego and fear, bring so many people down.
Yeah.
I can tell you as a coach, fear is a huge thing that I deal with all the time. And now I'm dealing with that in the business world with people who have the same thing. And first thing I tell them is fear's a natural thing. I mean, if there's one person on this earth that could sit there and tell me that they've never feared something, they're probably not telling you the truth. So it's a natural thing. The thing is how to get over the fear, is how to work through the fear, how to jump through the fear so that you have the confidence. And the more confidence you build, the easier it is to combat the fear. And I see that a lot in sports. I see it a lot, but now I'm seeing it a lot in business too. It kind of, not to use a bad word, it paralyzes people. It makes them not do what they can do. You said it earlier. Everyone has great gifts and skills and being able to bring those out. But too many times, fear prevents that from happening. And I see it a lot. I really do. So that's another thing I think leaders need to be more cognizant of, is how do I get them through this fear? Yeah. I used to tell my players, play fearless. Then I got thinking about it. I'm like, no, that's not really helping them. Telling them that, hey, fear is natural. You're okay. You're going to be okay here, but let's figure out how to overcome it. I'm going to get you through it. I'm going to work you through it.
I think that's spot on. And I think it's a really underappreciated aspect of the potential for leadership. Joe, you're so right. Fear is part of the human condition. we're all wired to have fear, and there are good evolutionary reasons that we have fear
Yeah,
as part of
right.
our experience.
Right.
The problem, though, is that people run away from it. They avoid it.
Right.
And part of the job for us as leaders is to bring people back into that zone and to say, you're going to have fear, but we've got to work through it together. We've got to figure it out. And we can't just run for the hills, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, part of great leadership is that character that we were talking about. The other part is courage.
Right.
And summoning the courage of people. And eventually you kind of get good at dealing with fear, because you realize that often your mind is just playing tricks. And the reality is rarely, it's not nearly as bad as you kind of imagined. And so you kind of realize, like, I just have to, be in that awkward, difficult fear stage for a while and figure it out, but we're going to do it.
That's so awesome. I love it. This is so much fun. So I'm going to ask you these 3 questions. My book is The 3 Ps, Finding Your Purpose, Perspective, and Passion. What is your purpose in life?
My purpose is to help people lead good lives. And so, I would want people to figure out for themselves what is their version or their vision of a good life. For me, it means lives of purpose, lives of integrity, lives of impact and fulfillment. But I really want people themselves to come up with their own version of what they mean. What is a good life for me?
So I have to ask you this question, because you said this at the start, and I can't forget this. You had a professor in college have you write I think you said write a paper on what is a good life. Yeah. What did your paper say in so much, not the whole thing, but what did your paper say?
Yeah, well, it's a long time ago, but I think it had to do with a quest for excellence and kind of character and service. I think were the main themes back there. And again, we were studying different people around the world, philosophers, but also people who were dying, and poets, and psychologists and researchers, journalists. There's a lot. There's a great tradition of people who've been writing and talking about this that we can draw upon to inform our own views.
And you're still living it.
Trying, yeah. It's a lifelong quest.
It's amazing.
So I'm doing my best. Yeah.
And what's your perspective on life?
And my perspective on life is that too often we get caught up when the kind of the blinders, and then we're parents, we've got a 15-year-old and a 13-year-old, we got soccer and dance and homework. And so it's easy to get pulled into that sort of narrow view. But if you kind of zoom out, life is a gift. Yeah. We have, it's amazing. It's miraculous to think about how could it all possibly be. And so the question is, what do we do with it? And, we're stewards here who have a responsibility to do something good with our lives, with other people, to kind of use the privileges that we have, the blessings that we have, the opportunities that we have. And so I really think that it's important for us all to try to take the long view and the big picture. And that's also part of the job of leaders, especially. Things, you got to do the short-term survival too, but somebody's got to take their view and look out 30 years, 100 years and say, where are we going? What's going to matter? What's legacy going to be like? And so we really need just the very notion of taking a perspective, of viewing it with a perspective, to your point, I think is a really important part of life and leadership.
I love it. And last one is passion. What's your passion? And you kind of gone over some of it, but what's your true passion?
Yeah, I have a passion for growth and development and learning and improving and sharing that with the world. One of my colleagues that I get to work with, Richard Leiter, he's a real luminary. He writes about purpose. And a lot of people are stuck, and passion and purpose are very related. Your passions give you a clue as to kind of a deeper purpose. He says a lot of people find it very difficult. What is my purpose? It sounds so philosophical, sounds so abstract. He said, there are clues, but there's kind of a universal purpose that's probably true for all of us, certainly most of us, which has to do with growth and giving. So if you're doing some growing and you're doing some giving, those are probably feeling pretty meaningful, pretty purposeful for you. And for me, I just love that. I just have a passion for, learning, reading, writing, developing myself, systematically trying to improve and helping other people, get better so that we can all, get closer to our potential and live a good life.
Yeah. And I still believe this. I have a saying, this purpose equals passion and passion equals purpose, with the perspective in the middle to hold it together. Yeah. And I really believe that. And I've had some conversation with people who kind of don't relate purpose and passion, which is okay. I mean, that's what makes the world go round. But it's pretty amazing that everything that you've talked about revolves around serving others, right? Everything that you're based everything on, because for me, my charge now is to have people have a peace of mind. I think people are born with a peace of mind. So you're born, you come out, you kind of crying, and they put you in your mother's arms and everything's fine. You have a peace of mind. I want people to, when it's time to go, to have that same kind of peace of mind, that they lived life to the fullest, that they did things, they left a legacy, they helped people, they made the world a better place. And so peace of mind when you're born and peace of mind when you go. And that's kind of my charge now, but it's hard to do. It's really hard to do because, again, you have so many arrows coming at your purpose. I say it like you have a purpose, you have a circle, and your purpose is in your circle, but then you have all these things that come at you to try to take you out of that purpose. Yeah. And so it's so interesting. This has been unbelievable. So I want you to tell people how they can get a hold of you, how they can get your book, read your newsletters, your blogs, see you on TED Talks. You've been on TED Talks before. How can they see all that?
Yeah. Well, thank you for asking. I love to be out there putting out new material and pointing to new books that I'm reading or videos. So my website is a great place to start. So it's greggvanourek.com, GreggVanourek.com. And there you're going to find the blogs that I write every week,
which are amazing.
Also, thank you. All sorts of free resources and these kinds of things. Our books. And so my dad and I wrote Triple Crown Leadership. It's excellent, ethical, enduring. That's available on Amazon, barnesandnoble.com, online. And my other book, Life Entrepreneurs, that we talked about too, is also available online, Amazon, bn.com. And then I really have a lot of fun on Twitter at G Vanourek, posting a lot, learning from other people, connecting with the community. And we've got a Triple Crown Leadership Facebook page, which is another thing that we do where we're posting. And then the last thing I'll mention is we're just launching a new startup nonprofit called the Vail Alliance for Purposeful Living. And it's designed to help people manage transitions in life and live their lives more purposefully. So the vailalliance.org is another great resource for people who are thinking about what's next or looking to connect with a community of people working on these issues of purpose and a passion and a perspective, as you so well put it, Joe.
Well, you're amazing. And I'm blessed to have met you. And the first time that Gregg and I met, we did a Zoom call, and I don't know, all of a sudden it was an hour into it, and we hadn't even realized it was an hour into it. So I think we could probably keep going on this podcast for another hour. We might have to do podcast number 2. I just get so intrigued by people like you who are just so into helping others and serving others and making other people's lives better. And that's what we need more of in this world. And you're leading that charge, and I appreciate that. And I just want to thank you for coming on today. You changed a lot of people's lives today. Thanks, Gregg.
It's my pleasure. And thank you, Joe. Your work is amazing, and I appreciate you.
We're trying, right? We just got to keep the faith and keep going. I appreciate it.
Let's do it. Yeah.
All right. Have a great week.
You too. Cheers.